In this session, we will discuss about group communication. An underlying assumption with respect to RPC is that the communication involves only two parties. One is the client and the other is the server. Now, RPC cannot handle communication from one sender to many receivers, other than by performing separate RPCs with each one. So in this session, we will discuss an alternative communication mechanism in which a single message can be sent to multiple receivers in one operation. That is by making use of group communication. So basically, a group is a collection of processes that act together in some system or user specified way. The key property that all groups have is that when a message is sent to a group, all the members in the group will receive it. It is a form of one-to-many communication, one sender, many receivers. So we can see a group over here with one sender and many receivers. So when a sender sends a message, that message will be received by all the receivers. Just like the way we have groups on WhatsApp. So we have a WhatsApp group for distributed operating system also. So whenever I post any messages, that messages are received by all the students in that group. So basically, groups are dynamic. New groups can be created and old groups can be destroyed. A process can either join or leave a group. A process can be a member of several groups at the same time. So consequently, mechanisms are needed for managing groups and group membership. Now we will look at some of the most important design issues and point out the various alternatives in group communications. Starting with closed groups and open groups. So what are closed groups? Closed groups are typically used for parallel processing. For example, a collection of processors or processes working together to play a game of chess might form a closed group. They have their own goal and do not interact with the outside world. So here we can see a group and the members of this group. So an outside process is not allowed to interact with the members of this group. So basically, this process is one which is not a member of this group. Moving on to the next group, that is open group. The idea of open group is to support replicated servers. It is important that processes that are not members can still send messages to the group. In addition, the members of the group may also need to use group communication. For example, to decide who should carry out a particular request. The distinction between the closed and the open group is often made for implementation reasons. Now we'll move towards peer groups and hierarchical groups. In peer groups, all the processes are equal. No one is the boss. All decisions are made collectively. A peer group is symmetric and has no single point of failure. If one of the process crashes, the group simply becomes smaller but can still continue with the operation. A disadvantage is that decision making is more complicated in peer groups. To decide anything, a vote has to be taken which consists of some sort of delay and overhead. Whereas with respect to hierarchical groups, some kind of hierarchy exists in the group. For example, one process is the coordinator and all others are workers. In this model, when a request for work is generated either by an external client or by one of the workers, it is sent to the coordinator. The coordinator then decides which worker is best suited to carry out and then forwards it to that particular worker. Now the problem over here is the loss of the coordinator brings the entire group to a grinding halt. But as long as it is running, it can make decisions without bothering anyone else, which is not the case in peer groups. Now we will discuss about group membership. When group communication is present, some method is needed for creating and deleting groups, as well as for allowing processes to join and leave the group. Now, one possible approach is to have a group server to which all these requests can be sent. The group server can then maintain a complete database of all the groups and their exact membership. This method is straightforward, efficient, and easy to implement. Unfortunately, it shares with all centralized techniques a major disadvantage, that is, a single point of failure. If the group server crashes, the group management ceases to exist. Probably, most or all groups will have to be reconstructed from scratch, possibly terminating whatever work was going on. Let's have a look at the approaches to manage group membership. In an open group, an outsider can send a message to all group members announcing its presence. In a closed group, something similar is needed. To leave a group, a member just sends a goodbye message to everyone. So far, all of this is straightforward. However, there are two issues associated with group memberships. Let's have a look at them. Now the first issue, if a member crashes, it effectively leaves the group. The trouble is there is no polite announcement of this fact that as the process leaves voluntarily. The other members have to discover this experimentally by noticing that the crashed member no longer responds to anything. Once it is certain that the crashed member is really down, it can be removed from the group. The next issue, leaving and joining have to be synchronous with the messages that are being sent in the group. Now when a process has joined a group, it must receive all the messages that were sent to the group. Similarly, when a process has left a group, it must not receive any more messages from that particular group. And the other members must not receive any more messages from it. So one way of making this thing sure that joining or leaving is integrated into the message stream at the right place is by converting this operation into a message sent to the whole group. Coming to group addressing. In order to send a message to a group, a process must have some way of specifying which group it means. In other words, group needs to be addressed just as processes do. So we will discuss about multicast, broadcast and unicast in this session. If a network supports multicast, the group address can be associated with a multicast address, so that every message sent to the group address can be multicast. Now in this way, the message will be sent to all those machines that need it and no others. Moving towards the next addressing, that is broadcasting. If the hardware supports broadcast but not multicast, the message can be broadcasted. Every kernel will then get it and extract from it the group address. If none of the processes on the machine is a member of that group, then the broadcast is simply discarded. Otherwise, it is passed to all the group members. And finally, moving towards unicast. So if neither multicast nor broadcast is supported, the kernel on the sending machine will have to have a list of machines that have processes belonging to the group. The kernel then sends each one a point-to-point message. Next is about send and receive primitives. The primary difficulty is that with RPC, the client sends one message to the server and gets back one answer. With group communication, there are potentially n different replies. So we abandon the two-way request-reply model underlying RPC and go back to explicit calls for sending and receiving information. Now the library procedures that processes call to invoke group communication may be the same as for point-to-point communication, or they may be different. If user programs directly call and send receive themselves, there is something to be said for doing group communication with this existing primitives instead of inventing a new set. Now suppose for the moment that we wish to merge two forms of communication. To send a message, one of the parameters of send indicates the destination. If it is a process address, a single message is sent to that one process. If it is a group address, a message is sent to all members of the group. A second parameter to send points to the message. The call can be buffered or unbuffered, blocking or non-blocking, reliable or not reliable, for both the point-to-point and group cases. Similarly, receive address or receive indicates a willingness to accept a message and possibly blocks until one is available. If the two forms of communications are merged, receive completes when either a point-to-point message or a group message arrives. However, since these two forms of communication are frequently used for different purposes, some systems introduce a new library procedure. So we assume, or we will call it as group send and group receive. So a process can indicate whether it wants to do a point-to-point or a group message. Next is about atomicity. Most group communication systems are designed so that when a message is sent to a group, it will either arrive correctly at all the members of the group or at none of them. Situations in which some members receive a message and others do not are not permitted. The property of all or nothing delivery is called as atomicity or atomic broadcast. Now, when a process sends a message to the group, it does not have to worry about what to do if some of them do not get it. The only way to be sure that every destination receives every message is to require them to send back an acknowledgement upon a message received, as long as machines never crash. This method will work. However, many distributed systems aim at fault tolerance. So for them, it is essential that atomicity also holds even in the presence of machine failures. So basically, when we talk about atomicity, it is a property of all or nothing delivery.